and the daughter of Herodias danced before them, and she basically made the king give an oath to kill John. And to avoid embarrassment, King Herod didn't want to kill John, but he ordered for his death. Out of embarrassment, to save his own skin, as we might say. He was a king, but he had an oath. And so our beloved John, his life was taken, and it was the disciples who went to collect John's body and bury it. They then had to go and tell Jesus of what happened. And then we get to Matthew 14, verse 13. And I'll read. When Jesus heard of it, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. And when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the cities. And Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude and was moved with compassion towards them. And he healed their sick. And it was the evening. His disciples came to him saying, "This is a desert place, and the time is now past. Send the multitudes away that they may go into the villages and buy victuals for themselves." But Jesus said, "They need not depart. Give ye them to eat." And they said unto him, "We have here but 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he, Jesus, said, "Bring them hither to me." And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and took 5 loaves and 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and brake and gave the loaves to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat and were filled, and they took up the fragments that remained, 12 baskets full. And they that had eaten were about 5,000 men, beside women and children. I'll continue. And straightway Jesus constrained the disciples to get into a ship and to go before him onto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up to a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when his disciples saw him walking, they were troubled and said, "It is a spirit." And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake to them, saying, "Be of good cheer. It is I. Be not afraid." And Peter answered and said, "Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water." And he, Jesus, said, "Come." And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But he saw the wind was boisterous, he was afraid and began to sink. He cried, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, "O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt?" And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, "Of a truth, thou art the Son of God." Hallelujah. Someone say, all the time we spent with Jesus in the past still counts. It still counts. Why do we say this? Hallelujah. Let me just go back a bit. Jesus had been ministering in various cities, in his own city. He was busy with ministry. He had heard that his first cousin had died, and he went to be alone, but then he found himself still ministering. He had compassion on the people who came because of his fame, and they knew what he could do. And Jesus healed the sick, even though he was entitled to be grieving. He still had compassion on those who came, and he ministered to them. But then he said to the disciples, I find this quite interesting, he constrained the disciples and told them to go into a ship, and he'll meet them on the other side. I think that was Gennesaret. He'll meet them on the other side of the sea or the lake. Why did he have to constrain them? Remember, the disciples were saying to him, come, tell them to go now. You know, it's been a long day. Come on, Jesus, let's eat. And Jesus said, no, let me feed the people. So can you imagine at that time, they're saying, Jesus, but you've been speaking all day, you've been healing all day, come on, let's go. And so he had to constrain them, and he gave them orders. And then can you imagine, Jesus was dealing with 5,000 plus people to send them away. How long would it have taken Jesus to send the multitudes away from that desert place? And then Jesus went up into a mountain. So how far from the sea would the mountain have been in the time that the disciples were boarding this ship to go on to the other side? But when Jesus went to the mountain, he prayed. That's when he had time with God to be restored, to say what he had to say, to be filled again, to be empowered for ministry. So you can imagine, Jesus had been on the mountain away from the disciples for a considerable amount of time. And here they were in the middle of the sea, tossed about to and fro. I'd like to draw our attention to the fact that the disciples had been spending a lot of time with Jesus. Not just that day, but over days and weeks and months. They had spent a lot of time with Jesus. And interestingly, they are in a ship together. They are all with Jesus, getting to know Jesus. But then when he walks on water towards them, they're like, that looks like Jesus. Nah, that's a spirit. And they became afraid. In fact, they cried out. It is a spirit. They cried out in fear. Can you imagine spending so much time with someone? And yes, perhaps they were in the sea and not on land. They're used to seeing Jesus on the land, performing miracles and teaching them. But there's a change of setting, and for some reason they don't recognize it's Jesus. And they were all afraid.